And we are live on YouTube, and I'll let everybody in. Good evening, everybody. This is the Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Welcome. If you're just joining us, this is the Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Welcome, everybody. And we'll get started in just a couple more minutes. Thanks for joining.
Matt, could you open up the chat, please?
I think I did.
Oh,
Is it not?
is it
It's
for
open.
anyone else? Not for me.
Oh, sorry. Open up the wrong things. There we go. There's Nathan Bovell. Welcome, Nathan. We're just getting started. We're on YouTube, and we're just letting everybody in. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay, let's get going. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Losack. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. Good evening to everybody. This evening, we're going to discuss issues with elevator safety, maintenance, and what to do if you have a problem with your elevators. This has been an issue that's been something that's come to the Renters Alliance attention on multiple occasions. And there's been some confusion about what to do. And of course, with the growing number of senior citizens and the disabled who live in apartment communities, it's become increasingly important that people understand what they should do and who's responsible for elevator maintenance and for certifying. So this evening, we're going to have that discussion. Let me say a couple things about the rules. Only the panelists will be able to speak. People who are listening in can put comments and questions in the chat, and we will monitor that throughout the town hall this evening. After we have our elevator discussion, we'll also have a discussion with representatives from the city of Gaithersburg and the mayor of Rockville, who will also be joining us to give some updates on their renter programs that they're proposing. So tonight's discussion is going to be moderated by our outreach director, Jackie Mashinya, who'll be backed up by our senior policy analyst, David Mullins, and of course, all of us will kibitz. But let me quickly introduce the rest of the staff. That is Emily Towie, our outreach coordinator, Tim Wong, outreach coordinator, Hua Ho, who's with the Westmore Service Year Internship Program with us, and Pat Beckham, also on our staff doing outreach. And now I'll turn it over to Jackie Mashinya to introduce our special guests. Go for it, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. So, first guest tonight, our Chief Daniel Gutierrez with the Maryland Department of Labor, Division of Labor Industry Safety Inspection Unit, or DLLR, along with Assistant Chief James Harper. And they're going to provide general information about the inspection and certification process for elevators, along with any enforcement done by DLLR. So, Chief Gutierrez or Chief Harper, whenever you're ready, you can share your slides. Any questions you have, please put them in the chat and we will answer them at the end of their presentation.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Gutierrez. I'm the Chief Elevator Inspector for the state of Maryland. We have our program manager, David Dearborn, and with me in the chat is Jim Harper, my assistant. So the Elevator Safety Inspection Unit operates under the Division of Labor and Industry, the Maryland Department of Labor. Our core is focused in protecting the public from mechanical failures and safety hazards associated with vertical transportation. That means elevators, escalators, wheelchair lifts, and handicap lifts. The fundamental mission of the Elevator Safety Inspection Unit is to ensure the safety of the general public and employees by regulating the installation, operation, maintenance, and repair of elevators and related lifting equipment across the state. The unit works to achieve zero accident operating environment by enforcing a strict and annotated code of Maryland, national safety codes, which we have. Those are the books that mandate the maintenance of the elevators and the manufacturer's criteria. The role and responsibilities for our department or our unit is to make sure we extend beyond the elevator standards of the elevator. That includes, once again, repeat, the escalators, the lift, the dumbwaiters, the moving walks, and the workman's hoist. They are normally installed outside buildings. So our unit, we do a final acceptance inspection and alteration inspections. So the the state relies on third-party inspectors to perform the annual safety inspections on the elevators. That means the existing elevators. We do acceptance inspections on newly installed elevators or elevators that are being modernized or repaired. Also, we do accident and incident investigations. So if it's a malfunction of the elevator that results on an injury of a public, we have the authority to conduct an investigation and determine the cause of the accident, and we provide violations through the codes and mandate the corrective actions to the building owners. The complaints that we enforce upon receiving the complaints from the citizens, if it's a potential condition for the elevator unit, either erratic movements, door malfunctioning, telephone not working, or uncertified units, the elevator safety inspection unit may conduct an inspection. If the state determines that the building owner has failed to comply with the safety codes, the state has the authority to issue safety orders and/or citations, and to remove the unsafe equipment from service as necessary to protect the public. Complaint accident process. Accident complaints form as received. We gather all the concerned information, the unit and history in our database. We see all the information, and we schedule an inspection if a warrant. Complaint and accident process. Inspections of an accident, incident, or complaints. The inspection is performed by state inspectors. We don't rely on third-party inspectors for this. Any violation identified during the process of the investigation or serious violations can be resolved. And if we find serious violations, then we can remove the elevator units from service. All the violations that are written during the investigation must be cleared by an elevator, state elevator inspector. And also we might issue citations. So the Maryland Department of Labor, which is our initials, MDOL, historically used to be DLLR, Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation. They oversees the safety certification of all public elevators, escalators, handicap lifts, and moving walks in the state. While building owners are responsible for ensuring the maintenance and safe operation, the general public plays a crucial role in maintaining safety. Here is how you should utilize and interact with the Department of Labor regulated elevators. James, that's you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. James Harper. I'm the Assistant Chief Elevator Inspector for the state of Maryland. So elevators that are not operating and are out of service for a long period of time, if an elevator is not operating, then we do not have authority over making the owners put those units back in service. That will fall under the American with Disabilities Acts for building access and the Livability Code, which falls to the local jurisdictions for enforcement. From Montgomery County, the Department of Housing and Community Affairs oversees the Livability Code. Third-party qualified elevator inspectors, they are responsible for the annual inspections. They have to register with the commissioner, conduct and witness tests and periodic inspections in accordance with the elevator safety code. After the complete submission, after they submit the required inspection report and the related documents to the state in accordance with the Maryland regulations. So they report serious or unsafe conditions to us so that we can send someone out to do a follow-up inspection and remove the unit from service if need be. So the building owners, they have to re-register their units every year, and they have to have the annual inspection done annually every year. And they need to do that within at least 30 days before the periodic inspection, registration that is. They are to maintain their elevators in accordance with the safety code and ensure that all required tests and inspections are performed by qualified persons. Elevator mechanics are licensed in the state of Maryland, and to do work in Maryland, they are required to maintain those licenses and renew them every year as well. All required test documentation is to be kept in the elevator machine room or on the premises and be available to the third-party qualified elevator inspector and any other elevator personnel that are there to work on or inspect the elevator. They must be a third-party qualified elevators inspector licensed in Maryland to witness these safety tests and perform the inspections. Every public elevator in Maryland must possess a valid, up-to-date certificate of inspection issued by the state. So when you're in the elevator, it should be posted somewhere in the elevator. Typically, it will be in a frame. Doesn't have to be. It can be just posted in there itself. Sometimes it will be like in the lobby, right in front of the main doors. The certificate ensures that the elevator has undergone its mandatory annual safety tests and inspections, and that it has been registered with the state. We have received those inspections. If you notice that a certificate is missing or is, expired over 90 days or so, you have the right to report it. There is a email address on the certificates, and also we will give you that information here. If the elevator is not operating properly or you experience a safety issue, you should use the proper channels to report it. To file a complaint for an accident or an unsafe unit, contact the Maryland Division of Labor and Industry. Elevator Safety Unit directly. This number will get you right to our office, 410-767-2350, or you can email us at safeforyou@maryland.gov, and that's spelled there on the slide for you. If you are trapped in an elevator, there is an issue with the elevator, an emergency situation, please do not call us, as we may not be close to the area you're in, and we do not have all the equipment for a evacuation from a stopped elevator. You'll want to use either the phone, which is inside of the elevator, or your cell phone if you have service in there. If you push the elevator phone, it will get you to a service that is able to contact 911 or other personnel, or you can simply call 911, give them your location. It's always a good idea when you go into a building, know the building name, have an idea of what street it's on, so if you do have to call 911, you can give them that information. If you are trapped in an elevator, please do not try to extricate yourself. That is one of the worst things you can do, because as you try to exit the unit and it would start to operate, obviously we don't want to see something like that happen. So you stay in the unit till emergency personnel get there. They will power the unit down to be sure that it cannot move before they start removing anybody from the unit. So just stay calm, relax, and wait for help to arrive. Just a few do's and don'ts whenever you're using equipment. Always watch your step. Always look down when entering or exit the units. Typically, the elevators will be flush with the floor, but occasionally they can stop a little bit out, or as they sit for certain types of elevators, they can drift a little bit. So always be sure to look at the floor level when you're stepping in and out. Make sure you have a hold of your small children or your pets. Keep them close to you as you go through the doors. If your pet is on a leash and you have a retractable leash, don't let that leash stretch way out. When you're getting on the elevator, keep it tight to make sure that they're moving with you and that you both get through the doors without one being stuck on the other side of the door. When the doors are closing, even though they have reopening devices, please do not put your hands inside the door. If you hit the hall call button again, or if you hit the door open button inside the elevator, the doors will reopen. It's just not worth the chance of getting your hands pinched in the door if it's too close or you don't break the sensor. Never use an elevator during a fire. If the building alarm sounds, the elevators are programmed to recall to the designated floor and shut down. But if for some reason it continues to operate, getting in the elevator you'll see the signs everywhere. In case of fire, use stairs. Again, do not fight the doors. Do not overload the elevator. If you have a lot of heavy equipment that you're moving in and out, or you have a lot of people loading on there, a lot of the newer elevators will tell you when it's overloaded. You know that you need to remove some of the weight. And again, if you're stuck, don't panic. If it stops between floors, just use the phone, call 911 to get you out of there. There is ventilation in the elevators. It may get warm, it may get cold, but air will still move, and you will not suffocate. So here's our emergency number. If you have an accident and you want to report it right away, that number is there, along with the email address, which is monitored 24 hours a day. But as we said, if you have an emergency situation, 911 should always be your first call. Thank you.
Thank you to you both. One of the questions, and we're just going through some Q&A, but initially I just kind of had a question just to get a little bit more clarity about how your office interacts with county code enforcement, specifically if you get complaints from tenants that there's been multiple breakdowns of elevators and they have, for example, contacted code. How would you guys then handle that?
So Jackie, maybe I can just speak a little bit about code enforcement first, and then we can go into answering that question because some of it might get answered. Is that okay?
If that's easier,
Yeah, why don't we
we can do
do code so that we can see what they do and then
the
compare
interjection questions.
differences.
Yes. If
Okay,
you
thank
go
you so
ahead,
much.
Nathan.
Okay, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan Bovell. I'm the Division Chief for Community Development at the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. And one of the programs that I oversee is code enforcement. The enforcement of elevators for the Department of Housing and Community Affairs is a little bit less specific than what DLLR, or they used to be DLLR does. We test to make sure, we don't test elevators, but we check to make sure that elevators and any other building systems, whether it's an elevator or an escalator, heating, air conditioning systems, functions as they are designed to function. So we check to see that it stops level with the floor, that it's operating, that it's going up and down, the doors are opening and closing properly, and we do that through our inspection process. We also check to make sure that elevators have their proper certificates displayed appropriately in the buildings. But we don't do any testing of individual elevator components. That's left to the third-party inspectors and for the inspectors at Maryland Department of Labor. If we go into a development and we find out that a elevator certificate is expired or there's some unsafe conditions, we will issue either a notice of violation or a emergency field notice. An emergency field notice would be issued if an elevator appears to be not functioning properly or not functioning at all. A notice of violation, what we refer to as an NOV, would be issued, for example, if the elevator does not display a valid certificate. Whenever we issue an emergency field notice, we go back the very next day to check the conditions to see if they have been corrected. If we go back and the conditions where the elevators are not functioning have not been corrected, then we will issue additional notices of violation. And when we issue a notice of violation, they vary in the terms of how long they have to correct the violation, and that depends on the condition. An elevator, a building that has one elevator not operable is very different than an elevator that has three elevators, but one is not operable. We will usually give a specific amount of time for us to come back to check to see if the violations have been corrected. And when we come back, and that number of days that we're going to give is noticed on the notice of violation. When we do come back, if the violations have not been corrected, two things could happen. One is if the landlord has given us sufficient documentation to show that they're making attempts to repair the elevator. Oftentimes, especially in a lot of our older buildings, the older elevators, the parts are not readily available, but they may be on order. So if we see that a technician has been there, that parts have been ordered, and they're just simply waiting for those parts, we may extend the amount of time for them to have that correction completed. If an unreasonable amount of time goes by, then we will actually issue a citation, which is a imposition of fines that are actually adjudicated in court, and we hope that usually will give us the fines for those violations not being corrected. In extreme conditions, we will condemn a building for elevators. If there's a building that has one elevator and the lack of an elevator poses a significant lack of egress, and there's no plan for that to be addressed, then we can actually condemn a building. If we condemn a building, then all of the occupants in that building have to be relocated. And generally, if it's something that's occurred because of the lack or something that the property owner did not do, then those condemnations happen and the relocations are at the expense of the landlord. I think there was a question about how we interact with DLLR. And generally, hi, Daniel. Daniel and I know each other. We have met at sites where we've had persistent elevator problems before. The enforcement and what we have authority over is different. So we often will coordinate. There have been circumstances when I've reached out to Daniel directly, or my staff has reached out to DLLR and said, we're having these elevator problems at this building. Can we meet out there and try to figure out what the remedy is going to be and make sure that our enforcement efforts are adequate. And that just doesn't happen with the DLLR. It happens with us, with permitting services, with MDDOT, whatever departments are that we interact with. We usually will try to have a good level of coordination between our department and their department so that we can try as quickly as possible to get units functioning so that residents don't have to suffer the circumstances of being in a building with an inoperable elevator or any other systems.
Nathan, can you or Daniel or James provide a statement or a description of what distinguishes your operation from the Department of Labor's operation so that the public knows who to reach out to first under what specific circumstances? Elevators broken, do I contact the state? Elevators broken, do I contact you? I think there's still a lot of confusion with that.
Yeah, and actually, Matt, there's actually nothing wrong with contacting both. They can contact most tenants are very familiar with code enforcement. They will reach out to us because we do more than just elevators in the building. So if an elevator is not operable, we would absolutely come out. We will investigate the outage. We will issue a notice of violation or a emergency field notice, and then we can also follow up with DLLR if there are circumstances that aren't warranted for us to handle. So oftentimes elevators, like I said, may have not had their safety inspections done. That's what happens when you get a certificate. When you get an elevator certificate, that involves several things. They will come out, they will inspect all your fire safety functioning of the elevator, the sprinklers, the recall service to the first floor. They'll inspect the alarm systems, the generator if one is present, and the functioning of the elevator. So those are things that DLLR will do. I'm sorry, Department of Labor will do, but we come out and we just check for the functioning and the placement of their certificates.
So from the public standpoint, are you recommending, Nathan, since you're in charge of code, that the no wrong door is through your door?
The no wrong door is through our door, unless you're stuck on an elevator. That's different. But if you're reporting an outage or a malfunction, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, you guys have fewer inspectors than we do on our end. They're not all located right here in Montgomery County, so we're able to respond quickly. We can do a quick visual assessment on what's happening and issue those notices and coordinate with DLLR if the licenses are expired, or if the elevator is completely shut down, or there are major issues, it feels like there's a safety issue, then I would say that they should absolutely contact both. I think that we can be the right door, but I think that knocking on multiple doors, it's the squeaky wheel that gets oiled, so I wouldn't have a problem with saying for serious issues to contact both of us directly. Daniel, feel free to, or James, to comment if you like.
Yes, I agree. If you have an issue with the elevator, you can always contact us. Depending on what the issue is, we will almost always send an inspector out to look at the elevator. And then if it is shut down, it's not operating, we will then also advise you to contact the Montgomery County so that they also can get involved and pick up where our authority ends. But as far as if you have an elevator where you're having issues with the doors closing or the phone's not working or any kind of issue like that, absolutely call us so we can get an inspector out there, identify the problem, and get the owner to take care of it.
We do have questions coming in from the chat if we can get you to answer them. The first question is, I am a wheelchair user with a power wheelchair that weighs about 400 pounds without me in it, sorry. Are the handicap lifts inspected on a regular schedule? I fell 20 feet in a handicap lift on May 2016 while in my wheelchair. I was told that the handicap lifts are not regulated like normal elevators. So I
They
believe
are
that-
regulated just like an elevator. They have an annual inspection every year, and it should have a certificate posted either inside in the car or outside on the door, like at the main lobby for that lift. The certificate should be posted there.
James, do you know if those wheelchair lifts are up to date in terms of modern wheelchairs? I mean, we've seen wheelchairs in the past, of course, were very light, but now the motorized ones are weighted. And as Beryl points out, hers without her in it is 400 pounds. Are most of those wheelchair lifts equipped for that kind of capacity?
Yes, any commercial wheelchair lift's going to be 750 pounds, at least. Residential lifts, you will see 500 pounds. So that would be it could be an issue if you were in or for a residential unit, but typically 750 pounds is what you'll see with the commercial units.
Julian is asking, what if the emergency phone/alarm doesn't reach anyone? In elevators in our building, no one picks up when you use those buttons.
So I would say tomorrow or tonight, send us an email with your building information so that we can send an inspector out to inspect it and test that. And if it continues not to work, just let us know. We'll get someone out.
Well, also, if you have a cell phone with you and have signal, you can contact the number that you have on the certificate. That number will reach to me 24 hours, and I will be able to help you as much as possible. If you don't get a help from them, probably we'll be calling 911 on your behalf.
Does the state of
Do you? Excuse me, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Pat.
No, I was just wondering if you had any suggestions or ideas for those people in wheelchairs during a fire. How do you suggest they get out? Do they use the elevators?
No, ma'am.
No.
So there
Well-
should be an evacuation plan for the building. Typically, there is a point in the building that they are to go to wait for fire and rescue to evacuate them. So the issue is with any newer elevator, if a smoke detector goes off close to the elevator, it's going to recall to the bottom floor and just sit there. So you're not going to be able to access it anyway. If the unit is running, and you're in the unit and the fire is close to one of the lobbies and it's an older unit, or just you don't want to take a chance of the elevator opening up on a floor that is on fire. So you do not want to use the elevators in an emergency situation of a fire.
Also,
I-
the evacuation of people in wheelchairs is regulated by the fire marshal or the local authorities, and should be part of their inspections.
Right,
we've
and what
had-
Fire and
we've had-
Rescue recommends is for people to actually shelter in place and not to try to make their way down the stairs on their own or to get on the elevator. The other thing I'll mention is that Montgomery County does have a law that every multifamily building needs to have a safety evacuation plan, and that is supposed to be shared with the residents in the building. Typically, in the safety evacuation plan, oftentimes they will identify if they have people with special needs. They'll share that information with first responders so that they can check on those. So you may want to just ask your building manager, do you have a fire safety or an evacuation plan? If they do not have that, then you can certainly contact our Office of Landlord Town Affairs to let them know, because that's another violation that DHCA would be able to issue. if those fire safety plans are not available to the residents of the building.
And that's a relatively new piece of legislation. When did it become effective, Nathan?
Let me look it up. It was about maybe a year ago. I believe the regulation is 625.
Right, but it took a while for it to come into effect. The
Yep.
reason I'm
I'll
saying.
look it up while we're on this call.
What's that?
I'm going to look it up while we're
Okay. Well,
here.
the reason I'm saying is that there's an expectation that your building has this plan, but we might know a number
Yes.
of buildings that don't have it yet. So if they don't, you might want to tell your property manager to get moving. Otherwise, please, as Nathan says, contact the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs.
We have a few more questions from the chat. Phyllis is asking, does the state of Maryland post notices on elevators that have been found to be unsafe, warning people not to use these elevators? And is the property manager liable for injuries caused if people use these elevators anyway?
So if during the inspection we found that the elevator is unsafe, yes, we will post and recommend the building owner to take action and remove the unit out of service. Normally we will post the unsafe notice either inside the mechanical room or at the main lobby, so the public will be able to see it when it's unsafe conditions. But if it's not a harm or dead situation, we will not post anything in there, because that's pretty much something that we will prevent from people moving in the building. So if a certificate is missing, we're not going to put an unsafe condition, if that's what the question is about.
Okay. And this one looks like it's per code. How long can an elevator be out of service in an apartment before it's a code violation? And what do you recommend for a wheelchair use? Okay, we already did the fire one. So how long should it be out before it's a code violation? And what's the difference between a building with one elevator and a building with multiple?
So an elevator not functioning or not functioning properly is immediately a coded violation as soon as we observe that. What changes is how we handle that. Like I said, if there's a building with one elevator and that's the only means of egress, that could be condemnable. If they don't have plans, oftentimes, if there's only one means of egress, and we've had smaller properties where the property manager will make provisions to help escort people up and down the stairs, to carry their groceries up and down the stairs. If they have a plan like that, we might give them a little bit longer time. But if you have a building with an elevator and that's the only means of egress, it's quite possible that we could either give them a very short turnaround or a condemnation if it's not corrected in a reasonable amount of time.
Because it's a health and safety issue, an immediate health and safety issue, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And the just to circle back, the regulation that requires the safety plans is ER 2125. And that requires them to have the fire safety plans. They have to be reviewed by the Department of Permitting Services. Their fire code compliance inspectors do that. They need to be updated every 3 years. Like I said, if you haven't heard back from your property manager about fire safety plans, we encourage you to call 311, ask for the Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs, and they will investigate that and issue their notices or citations if the manager is not compliant with creating those plans and getting them approved through the Department of Permitting Services.
And Nathan, do we know when that law took effect?
It was an update of 724, which was effective October 2024.
2024.
2024.
That was the original law, and I'm afraid I don't have the update to the 2125 that updated it for the emergency safety plans.
We will put it in our newsletter when we find it. I just want to make sure nobody's going gangbusters of somebody who's just getting it together. If it was just this fall, I think that it was became in effect, but I'm not sure. So we'll find that out for folks. I have a question for this Daniel and James. I know that the Montgomery County maintains e-properties database so that people can look and see what code violations take place in their building and how they're being handled. But does the state?
I dropped that in the chat, Mark.
Terrific.
I mean, Matt, I'm sorry. It's in the chat. It's the one near NB and it says index. And you can use that to look up any code violations at any property, single family properties, multifamily properties. If there are any violations issued by the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, you can find them there.
Terrific. And
I will say it's a little bit cumbersome to use. So if you do use that, you're going to go to the section where it says code enforcement. You're going to put in an address, and the address does not include the suffix. So no road, street, avenue, boulevard. So if it's 1401 Rockville Pike, you just put 1401 Rockville.
Okay, well, it sounds like it's temperamental, but at least it exists. Does a similar database exist on the state level?
There was a
No.
law just passed that we have to provide that. It hasn't went into effect yet. We are working to put that website together. I don't know if it shows the violations, or I don't remember if it shows violations or not, but it does show whether an elevator has a current certificate or not. I can get the details of that and get it to you so you can put it
Yeah,
out.
it would be useful, obviously, for the
Mhm.
same reasons as DHCA, providing that public information for active residents to make sure that their equipment is using and correctly and been maintained correctly, and also, to see where you all are. Do you all have a backlog in inspections on elevators?
So going back to, one second, going back to, if we provide that information through the Maryland Information Public Act, they can contact my office and request all the records regarding to an elevator in a specific building. We will provide, whatever we have on hand, and there will be the history of the elevator. If there is any complaints, the files will be there, and we can provide to the customer, which is an access to anybody that requires them.
Great, and I guess that's what people can do now, but in the future, there'll be this database that you all are assembling, which will make it easy access, I imagine.
It was proposed in the law. If the law gets approved, then it will be a requirement for us to provide that information.
Thank you.
And I just dropped in the chat, Matt, the 2125 safety law went into effect February 24th of 2026.
Okay, so it's a little more recent than we thought. So February, March, April, May, it's been 3 months, so they should have been getting on it. So if you find that your property staff has not put together an emergency plan, you can prompt them. It is recent. They may not know about it. We know how property managers sometimes are knowledgeable and sometimes they're not. But if not, ultimately, then please take it to DHCA and inform them so that they can inform property management with a little bit more teeth.
Nathan, I had a follow-up question for you. So you explained that if there's just one elevator in the building, and if that's out, that could be like an immediate code violation. A tenant should call 311. Can you talk about if there's 2 or 3 elevators in the building, what the timeline is there in terms of like contacting code?
No, so anytime, whether there's 1, 2, 3, 4 elevators, anytime any of them are non-functioning, that's considered to be a code violation.
Okay.
So I would say to call 311, ask for code enforcement. Now, I will say we do not, they're not essential personnel. So code enforcement inspectors work Monday through Friday between usually 7 o'clock and 5:30 p.m. But if there's an emergency, absolutely call 911. And if there's a serious building condition that's existing, then we do reach out to our code inspectors to see if we can get people to respond on overtime to assess the situation. But it doesn't matter if you have 1 elevator or 10 elevators. If any of them are not functioning, that's still considered to be a code violation that we will come out, investigate, issue a notice of violation or a citation for, and follow up until it's corrected.
Good to know.
And I have a
Thank you.
question to go along with that. So if it's, for example, like last month in my building, we have 2 elevators. They both went down Saturday afternoon. They didn't go back up to Monday. What is the recourse for tenants like myself who live like on the 13th floor if we have to use stairs for 2 days before Monday and someone comes by? Is there anything we can do? state or county?
You notify to us after the elevator has been out of service, but we will send an inspector the week on the weekday to make sure to do an inspection. Unless you find that your elevator is very unsafe, then we will have to send an inspector right away to perform a safety inspection.
Is there nothing in policy or law that says in a building, especially of multi-stories, 5, 10, 20 stories, where we have seniors or the disabled on multiple floors who, as Jackie points out, if the elevator goes down on a Friday night, we've got no officers to come and inspect until Monday. Is there anything that can be done on an emergency basis? Is there any requirement for that?
Well,
part of the requirement is.
Sorry. So the building owner is responsible to maintain, as the law requires, for the building owner to have maintain the elevator in a good working condition. So normally buildings should have a service contract with an elevator company. So they're also supposed to provide information to the tenants to call an emergency number. That emergency number within the building will contact their elevator service company and make them to come over and make the repairs to at least one elevator to alleviate the situation.
And
Yeah,
that
and the other thing I
24-hour
wanted
number
to
is
add
part of
was
that
that
law.
the law that happened prior to the one that went into effect in February requires that landlords notify residents of any emergencies, of any loss of any of the services in the building. They have to give them proper notice of that. So if it's something that happens in advance, they should give them advance notice. If there is something that happens as an emergency, they still have to put out notices to say that something is not functioning properly. The law also requires that owners provide a 24-hour contact to reach somebody in building management so that they can contact someone in management to get the issue addressed. And just about every large multifamily property also has a elevator service contract where those elevator service contractors typically work weekends throughout the day and have the ability to come in to assess the situation and see if there's some either permanent or temporary measures that they can make to put the elevator back in service.
Thank you so much. Is there a final question that anyone has for DLLR or Housing Code?
I thought that Mr. Harper, I thought you said unless the elevator was some kind of emergency. How do you determine that an elevator poses an emergency or it's unsafe?
If we get a complaint or something, something happens that we go out and do one of our inspectors comes out, does a safety inspection, finds an unsafe condition, or during the annual inspection, the third-party inspector and the elevator company finds an unsafe condition, then we will post the unit out of service.
Okay. Just one quick question that I forgot to ask from Sandra. She said that in my building, they sometimes shut off 2 elevators out of 4 if an electrical storm is expected. Does that sound right? So they don't get knocked out by surge, presumably?
So not all the buildings require to have backup emergency power. And I believe they do that to prevent people getting stuck on the 2 elevators. They don't have the emergency power.
All right. Well, thank you so much to our special guests, Chief Daniel Gutierrez, Chief Assistant Inspector James Harper, and Nathan Bluval from DTA Housing Code. We are now going to move on to Councilmember Yamil Hernandez from Gaithersburg City Council. He's going to provide us a presentation on the ideas and proposals for future landlord tenant-related legislation in the city of Gaithersburg. Good evening, Council.
Good evening, everybody. Let me share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Excellent. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Like I said, Jamil Hernandez, City of Gaithersburg City Council. I have a few slides of some of the things we're working in regards to tenant protections or renter and tenant focus. First, just a quick reminder. I was before y'all almost 2 years ago when we were discussing the fee transparency legislation that now is city law. Just to remind everybody, Gaithersburg requires any landlord to provide prospective tenants a full disclosure of any, fees that are associated with the rent, whether they're optional fees, required fees, whatever fees that would be with your tenancy, they're required to be posted. You don't have to provide information, run a credit report, or do anything. It's either going to be on their website, accessible at the leasing office, call or email them, and they should provide you that full schedule on it. So it's been law about a year now. So I would love to hear from folks. If you're seeing that or not seeing that, I'd love to get some feedback on that as you experience it. The second item is what we're calling the rent roll project, which we're just starting the exploratory phase of. And the goal for this legislation is to create a citywide collection mechanism of all the rents and historical rents of the units in the city, so that the city can have clarity and visibility in rent increases, fee makeup, fee increases over properties over a period of time, and that we can be better informed of what those trends are. Right now, what we've seen or what I've heard is a bit of sometimes conflicting messages, where we hear from folks where they might have, they report a potential, like very large rental increases. We do investigations and maybe it doesn't show up that way, or it does. This kind of takes, or we look at third-party data like CoStar that provides us some of this data. That third-party data doesn't cover every rental unit in the city. Since you need a rental license to rent in the city of Gaithersburg, our rental license process allows us to potentially put a requirement like this that would create this database and inform us as policymakers, our staff, COLTA, in terms of what those city trends are in terms of rents. And what we like to do, just as we did with the fee transparency legislation, is to put everybody on a level playing field. So if there are significant increases going on, they'll be captured by this. If there are not significant increases happening, they'll be captured by this. And that data becomes what we call our ground truth, or our level playing field for all of us to look at and make decisions and be informed by it. The third item, just to provide our contact information, if you're having any questions or issues, landlord-tenant affairs, rental housing at gaithersburgmd.gov. Phone number is there. We also have our Commission on Landlord and Tenant Affairs. You can reach any of us in the mayor and city council if you'd rather talk to the elected officials. My email is there as well. The mayor and council at Gaithersburg MD reaches everybody on the city council and the mayor, and you're welcome to reach out to us with any questions that you may have. So those are the three topics that I wanted to talk to that. And I have one more quick one, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have, which is that in addition to serving you in the city council, I'm also on the board of workforce board here in Montgomery. And I wanted to introduce you or update you on the Rent Court Workforce Solutions Pilot Program. It's actually legislation passed by Delegate Vaughn Stewart, who authored this, which was to provide workforce interventions at eviction court when folks were going through it. Got passed in 25, funded, and sort of the implementation has started. And year to date, there have been about 200 residents that have gone through this program. And they, workforce will provide a report to the legislature and for anybody to read as to what efficacy these interventions have had in helping people stay housed, potentially find new housing, new jobs, or new opportunities. And the goal is, if it's successful and it's effective, it can go from a pilot program to a more permanent program and broader resource on it. So I'd love to hear, at some point from folks, and if you've heard it, you've seen any, any outcomes from it. So I thought it was a very interesting, piece of legislation, one we would like to do. The folks from WorkSource, Matt, offered if there's an interest for Rental Alliance, they're happy to come on another rental town hall and go through this program or anything else on WorkSource that may be of interest to your members. So those are my three things. Happy to take any questions, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jamil. We would love to have WorkSource on for a lot of reasons. First of all, Vaughn Stewart is on our board, so all he has to do is look in my direction, and it'll happen. He is a long-standing renter activist, and we think he's terrific. I have one question or suggestion, if it isn't to be answered already, that when you produce, if the Gaithersburg City Council passes your proposed legislation to collect this data, we've seen in the past that data like this can be overly aggregated. So, for example, we get, a whole bunch of folks are getting 2% rent increases, but only about 5% of the folks got 5, 10, and 20% rent increases. But you average it together and it comes out to about 4%. But that really doesn't tell the picture. And so we're hoping that it's disaggregated in a way so that we could see the batches of folks who are getting rent increases in one particular neighborhood, what those are, so that it's a little bit more granular rather than aggregated. I don't know if that was part of your plan, but if it isn't,
no, it is. I sought guidance from Talisha Searcy, Mayor Searcy at Tacoma Park. They have some similar components in terms of what they collect, and it's a really good question, and it is embedded in sort of, I wrote a scope of work and sort of, piece of it. It's not helpful if a section of the city is having 2% increases that you described, but there's an apartment complex doing 30% increases, the average. So the goal of this policy would be to have it building by building, unit by unit. And then, yes, you can look at citywide trends, but you can also look at sector, building, unit, and be able to break it up, by rents, but also fees, because, fees can also become a significant portion of the monthly burden that people have. And this will have, as when it gets introduced, there'll be work sessions and opportunity for public to come in and give testimony and additional context about their perspectives, which we welcome folks to come in. But yeah, no, absolutely, it's an important piece of the program and the legislation.
Yeah, Montgomery County, just so you know, used to have a renter survey that was just entirely overly aggregated. It just came up with the numbers, said this is what rents are across the county, and it really was overly aggregated. So hopefully that has changed in Montgomery County. We know that it has, and we'd like to see that if you get your proposal through. Jackie.
Oh, I was just going to real quickly say that on the WorkSource program, our partners at HIP are down there at the court, working with us, doing their eviction prevention. And they have mentioned that they're down there, you got rent relief, you got DHHS, you've got, same day representation from ACE. And it seems like a perfect fit to be down there. So I was glad to hear they're down there and we can confirm that. And like you said, it's a pilot, so we'll have to see where it goes.
We have another minute or so with Councilmember Hernandez. Is there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? All right, looks like you're off the hook.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody.
All right.
Thank you for having me on. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. All right, next we have Mayor Monique Ashton from the city of Rockville. She's going to provide us an update regarding proposed changes to Rockville Landlord Tenant Code Chapter 18. Mayor Ashton, you can go right ahead.
Thank you so
Whenever
much
you're ready.
tonight. Can you all hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. And
Okay, great. I have been taking notes and I apologize about my location. I've got some family visiting from out of town, but I felt it was really, really important to be here and I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Monique Ashton, Mayor of Rockville, and I'm looking forward to sharing a few updates about what we're working on. We have, just to give you a sense, we've had a lot of housing work sessions in the city of Rockville. Housing is one of our top priorities. And I won't read everything here, but just to get a sense, since 2024, we had a number of work sessions and have come up with 40 action items dedicated to improving housing. We've had work sessions on data reporting and transparency for renters. We've had work sessions on improving the quality of housing and adjusting our inspections program. And most recently, we had a number of work sessions specifically on our landlord tenant code. So we're tackling a number of things. In addition to that, there are things like the zoning ordinance rewrite and other big issues that we're trying to tackle to make sure that we're getting more high quality affordable housing. As part of our landlord tenant code update, we did a lot of community engagement. I want to give a special shout out to staff. My last term as council member, we created the Department of Housing and Community Development, and I'm so glad we did. They have really stepped up to the plate to do community engagement, to be an advocate for renters, and to really focus on this issue. I also want to thank the Renters Alliance and all who provided input. They had a number of work sessions and virtual input meetings. They did surveys, they did stakeholders, and lots of opportunities. And that website that we have, it's still live. You can track our updates and see where we are. It's called Engage Rockville. I would also note for our overarching housing plan, we have something called Results Rockville, and you can see where we are in our housing action items on that, and so you can track our progress. So just a couple highlights on the landlord tenant code update. We really tried to look at pre-rental and rental and the whole journey of a renter in the city of Rockville. And we really looked at looking at restrictions about eviction history, because we want to make sure that we're not, people don't have the opportunity to deny housing in an unfair way. Everyone has a chance, everyone needs housing. Another big thing that we've been talking about for a couple of years is this issue of algorithmic rent pricing. I know you have all heard about it. It's been in the news. There have been lawsuits at the national and state level. We were talking about it and trying to move forward. We then decided to support Julie Polakovich-Carr delegate's bill. At the state level, it did not pass. We advocated 2 years in a row. And so we decided to move forward on our own. And so we are very close. But we're trying to make sure that we're following best practices of other jurisdictions. And so that is something I'm hopeful that will be, if not the first, one of the first jurisdictions in the state of Maryland to address this issue. And this is really about making sure that there's free and fair competition, and that people are not using systems to push up rent prices in a way that is not fair. Increased transparency has been another big issue. So you heard from Councilmember Jamil Hernandez about fees. We've also been looking at fee transparency, but we're really trying to address some other issues as well. So in addition to the fee transparency that landlords will have to provide at the point of advertisement, as well as on the lease, we're also looking at reducing junk fees. We were hearing some things about fees for basic things like being able to receive packages. Everyone deserves to receive mail. So that's one of the things. We're having some restrictions on junk fees to make sure that there are certain levels of free and fair access, but as well as the transparency piece. And we're also addressing some of the guarantor requirements. So that is just the transparency, making sure there's fairness and not using systems on pricing, as well as helping people to get into housing. During the rental, we have a number of things we propose. And I should note that, as I mentioned, we had a work session in May. We're going to have another one in June. And so we had the code written out, and you can see it on our website. But we have a few more tweaks to make. So this is the direction of where we're going. So requiring landlords to report data. So we do already require landlords to include the rent history, the rent price, and any increases on leases. That is, every time they apply for a lease, they have to provide that. But we're looking at ways to increase transparency on that, both for looking at the data citywide, as well as ways that tenants can find out what is the history of increases in this building. 2-year lease options is another thing we're approaching, so that tenants can say, all right, I want to choose a 1-year lease, or I want to choose a 2-year lease, and have an understanding of what that pricing is up front. And then there's a number of other small things. I won't get into all of them, but just things on increasing access so people who can't pay electronically still have. We were seeing some issues where tenants were having issues being able to make payment in a non-electronic form. Another big thing is new, and this is the relocation assistance program. We're still working on exactly how this will look, but we felt it was important to say if the landlord is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, we have a couple levers. We have a requirement for relocation assistance. We also will use the rental license as a way to make sure that people have a fair and safe quality housing. And then we are including our code to update and also add some enhancements to state law on really supporting tenant organization. We have some additional early lease termination for special circumstances in the case of job loss, domestic violence, and others. New is this repair and deduct option. I will say I grew up as a renter and my mother used this when the landlord would not make changes or they were slow. And so this would be something that there would be set criteria for staff, but it will make sure that people, have timely repairs. And then I mentioned earlier, change how leases and rent increase information are provided to the city. And then we're also looking at our fines. Some of the fines haven't been updated in a very long time. And so if someone is in violation, depending on the severity of it, we need to make sure we're looking at that to make sure it's commensurate with the issue that the tenant is facing. So that is our landlord-tenant code update. Those are some of the major highlights. This is a very extensive document, so I encourage you to look at Engage Rockville and see more details. We have fact sheets highlighting some of the proposed changes, and we'll revisit this again. I believe it will be June 29th, in case anyone wants to join us. But we have a number of other program and policy updates that I wanted to share, and this is something I'm really proud of. We are looking to pilot a pre-eviction financial assistance program. We know that it is very difficult sometimes for tenants to find support and they have to get that eviction notification first. And there's something about the humanity of that, right? Of someone not having to get to that point. There's a lot of stress and anxiety that comes with that. And there are very few organizations who provide financial assistance prior to that eviction process. And so I believe in talking to Interfaith Works and some other housing organizations, we decided to try this as a pilot and see. That will launch in July. We also, as a body, the full mayor and council made some changes to the Rockville Emergency Assistance Program. We've added more money than historically to be able to support more residents. We've also expanded some of the areas where people can get help. So in addition to rent, we have been doing support for utility shutoffs, prescription medications. We spent a lot of time talking about that as a body, medical and dental expenses, food, and other basic needs. Another big new thing this year is taking in-house the first-time homebuyer program. And you can layer this with a moderately priced dwelling unit program as well. And this is, we know that many tenants are able to afford or are basically paying what people are paying in a mortgage. It's the down payment that has been a barrier for people who want to own. And so we are working on this. We started it this year, and we will be rolling out additional funds next year, next fiscal year, which starts in July. And if your parents have not had a home, there is an additional benefit there. So we're trying to look at helping people build generational wealth. We are going through a whole suite of educational materials. There have been a lot of state law changes, a lot of things moving at our level at the city. And so we want to make sure that people know their rights and have information so we can help avoid problems. Over this term, we've also created something called an affordable housing dashboard. And so in the past, I was just noticing that people had to call around to so many places to see, do you have MPDUs? Do you have affordable housing? And so what we did is create a website. People can go to our rockvillemd.gov, and they can use a map tool to see where that affordable housing is, how many units are there, et cetera. We're also working on increasing the supply of affordable housing. So through our zoning ordinance rewrite and some of our master plans, our council has done things like density bonuses, really to try to get above that 15%. We've also got and approved some new projects that are coming online with new moderately priced dwelling unit that is coming into the city. We just approved a number of new agreements for that. And then there's a building being developed right in town center. We've also been working to stabilize and support some affordable housing buildings that are in existence so that they don't we don't lose those units. The other big thing that I've noticed and my colleagues and I've been working on is really trying to look at the quality of housing and making sure that affordable housing doesn't mean that there's a different level of quality that's allowed. Everyone should be able to sleep and be in their home with dignity, should be able to feel comfortable about inviting guests over, but bottom line is they should feel safe. And so, I know I've knocked doors at a number of our affordable housing, and I said, how does this have a rental license? And so we really started having that deep question of what can we do to be more supportive? And the team has created a housing action team to pull together folks from the Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as the code enforcement to go in and do more inspections. And so as a body, we really looked at increasing inspections to help identify issues sooner and to support quality housing. And so that tenants don't have to report because sometimes they don't feel comfortable to report. We should be inspecting and making sure it's safe. And then we also are implementing an enhanced inspection program. So those who we're seeing a number of complaints of, or we are identifying issues, we're going to require more inspections as part of the rental license process. A couple of our next steps, we're going to be finalizing the landlord-tenant code. We are looking at cooling requirements. That's a work session looking at our building code. As I mentioned, the pre-eviction financial assistance pilot will launch in July. We've got that suite of educational materials coming. And then we're going to also look at the MPDU Molly Price Dwelling Unit Code update. And I just wanted to share a few of our contacts. We want to make sure people feel that we are available and that they can get help when they need it. I included the Rockville Housing Community Development contact, as well as our code enforcement contact, my direct contact, and if you want to reach out to our entire council, mayorcouncil@rockvillemd.gov. If you want to reach out to me, I'm Ashton at rockvillemd.gov. And then there are two website resources I wanted to flag, which is our main website, but also a website that really goes into more detail about our code updates and other ways to get involved. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mayor Ashton. We're going to take some questions, but one question we do have from Beryl is that she's having a lot of trouble getting landlords to answer any questions she has regarding wheelchair accessibility modifications. Does the city of Rockville have more assistance in apartment hunting for wheelchair using renters who are not on government assistance? That's her question.
It's also, Mayor Ashton, something that we've raised before. We're seeing an increasing number of folks who are in wheelchairs or disabled, but we're not able to identify in all of the programs that for our house hunting that identify which apartment buildings have modified apartments for these people. And I'm wondering if your system has that or if you might be able to do that.
I would love to learn more because I know that we are doing some of that work, but we can always improve. I will just say in Rockville, we have really focused on the disability community in a number of ways in terms of pedestrian safety, in terms of accessibility to government services. And that's something we're working to get even better at. So I'd love to just hear some of the specific comments you have, and if there's anything I can do to be supportive, I will. The other thing that's interesting is, there should be modifications at any home if needed, but it might be something where we might be created some sort of dashboard or something like this. I'm just thinking out loud here, just to make that housing search process easier for people to understand what's available.
If we were to look at an apartment community, we might see that they have 12 units that have been modified for the disabled or those in wheelchairs, or 1 or 2 units. But one of the things that has been frustrating for some of our folks in the disability community is that the apartments that have been modified are still let to people who don't need them. Mm-hmm. And so is there a way to identify them and to prioritize those who need them ahead of others?
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Jackie, can I, if you don't,
Sure.
But speaking of, looking for certain types of housing, I did just want to say we certainly appreciate that affordable housing dashboard. This is something that I know that the county's, a much larger jurisdiction, but we've been, looking to is there a way to do this? Because we find that situation a lot where it's like there's MPDUs, but there's so many subsidy regimes and things that people that are looking for below market having one centralized place to go. They wanted to shout that out. And also another thing we've all been pushing for in many jurisdictions that you mentioned is this earlier rental assistance. So I really want to give that a shout out too. I know Gaithersburg moved theirs up, I think, to the 10-day notice, which is earlier than the county. But like you mentioned, it's just it's a less anxiety, more humanity situation.
Absolutely.
So appreciate that.
And we are 14 days, just so you know, we took that liberty when the state changed that law or allowed us to do that. I also would be remiss if I didn't say we do have a growing community of people with disabilities in Rockville and have provided and catered services to people with disabilities. So I am very proud that we are seeing more and more people move to Rockville. We have one of the nonprofits of Organize is Main Street, as you know, has been a model for really integrated services and wraparound supports, people with disabilities, and lower rents as well. So I just wanted to note Main Street, and then through our services and the way we're designing our facilities, we are upgrading to make sure that we're thinking about people with disabilities and all different kinds, physical disabilities that may be through mobility, visual, and hearing.
And a great cafe in Main Street there on the
That's
first floor.
right. It's now the Beanbag Cafe.
Oh, right. Yeah. And before we forget so as the mayor mentioned, the Chapter 18 updates, if anyone wants to dig in on that, like she recommends, y'all's meeting, not from this last Monday, but the one before, y'all went through, piece by piece. It was a great discussion. It's online. I highly recommend it. And by watching that, one of the things I gleaned was that the fee changes you're talking about, getting rid of junk fees, it really looks like the staff was proposing a move to more like the county stabilized model, which is where, it's like no fees but these versus, trying to play catch up with all these new fees coming out of anywhere. And so if y'all end up with that, I think, tenants would really appreciate it. It's exciting to see that being discussed.
Yes, that is the direction. I can't promise anything just yet because we are a body and we will vote, but that's a direction that we're moving in. We really wanted to have fee transparency, and also we were concerned about some of the junk fees that we were hearing about.
And I'd also like to point out that I like that there's a move to not limit forms of payment for tenants, because we get a lot of complaints, especially from seniors and those who can't easily access, because they don't have smartphones or laptops or anything like that. So the fact that that's being included in the City of Rockville codes is encouraging.
And I will note that we're doing these things called Neighborhood Connect. I know that Gaithersburg has council in the community. We're really trying to go into communities that don't necessarily have community associations, communities that have higher rates of affordable housing populations, multifamily populations. So we're getting around the city. We'll be doing one actually next week. And really trying to make sure that people feel like they are included, that we are listening. We're not going with a particular agenda. But what I can tell you is this issue of payments came up in one of those kinds of meetings that we had. And we got a chance to listen to what were the challenges that they were having, just trying to do a basic thing like pay their rent. And so we are listening. And, when we see that there's an issue bubbling up, we're trying to help address.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any final questions for Mayor Ashton from staff or chats before?
I'm afraid that they can't leave without answering the big question, which has been
rent
put in the chat.
stabilization.
That's right. So, and we'll put this to both Mayor Ashton and to Councilmember Hernandez. You can give your positions as you wish, but rent stabilization obviously is a key interest of our renter community, as we are seeing many renters being priced out of their homes. What are your thoughts?
I would just say I want to thank you for your advocacy, because we have made a number of changes and we are listening to renters and making sure they feel more included. As I mentioned before, I grew up in a community that I lived in a one-bedroom apartment with a lot of relatives, and my home was not being taken care of the way I think it should. So we're looking at all things, but in terms of the topic of specifically related to hard caps, the body has had a discussion on that. We've had about at least two work sessions, but we've had other meetings. We are trying a variety of policies to look at bad actors and to do things like the algorithms. We're going to continue to look at the data. We're going to continue to listen. And we are trying to make very big changes just to increase stability. But that's where we are right now.
Well said, Mayor.
Councilmember?
And for Gaithersburg, I appreciate the advocacy and the question. Anytime I get to see Matt, is one of the first, second, and third things he brings up. Frankly, the votes aren't there in Gaithersburg for it. And so one of the things I've been working on is this rental roll project, which should provide the policy foundation for any future discussions on this or anything else. So wanted to start with like a level playing field of data. And I think that will be informative to any council, that comes and gets to it. Yeah.
Well, we're big fans of facts, evidence, and reason, and we appreciate all four of your ears and the ears of all of your colleagues. Let me also point out to those who are listening, Rockville, Gaithersburg, and Tacoma Park are independent municipalities, and they do not come under Montgomery County's rent stabilization law or many other housing laws that we have in the county. So keep that in mind, that for your own advocacy, that if you live in the city of Rockville or the city of Gaithersburg or the city of Tacoma Park, you're going to need to advocate directly to those government bodies. So yes.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to this pre-eviction support is unique to Rockville. So I just want to be clear. It is not a county-wide change. I didn't want to spring that onto the county. We do have some differences in our jurisdictions. We are trying different programs and policies to see how we can move the needle and support renters, but I just wanted to at least point that out.
Terrific. Thank you both for coming. Jackie, I think we need to run through our renters resource information quickly.
Yes, very quickly. So Emily, if you can quickly get us through ULTA, just ULTA. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, guys. So the Office of Landlord-Tenant Affairs is a resource that you can use if your rights are being violated, if you're having an issue with your lease or with your ledger or your security deposit. First, you want to try to resolve that with your landlord or your property manager through the normal channels, filing a complaint in the portal, going to speak to them. If you're not able to resolve it with your property manager or your landlord, you can then escalate it by filing the complaint with the Office of Landlord-Tenant Affairs. I'll put the link in the chat where you can go to file online. You can also go to their office in person. You can call 311 to talk to them, but you cannot file the complaint over the phone with them. So online is going to be the best way, and I'll put that link in the chat right now. I'm going to talk about another office too that for different kinds of issues, the Office of Rent Stabilization. So they handle rent increases. So even if you're in a stabilized building or you're not in a stabilized building, if you have a very high rent increase or a question about your increase, maybe your landlord tried to give you 2 increases within a 12-month period, you can take those inquiries and complaints to the Office of Rent Stabilization. Theirs is different. Instead of an online complaint, you will call 311 directly, ask for the Office of Rent Stabilization, and they should be able to look into that for you.
Thank you, Emily. Well, if you can quickly get us through housing code and how to access it and what they do.
Okay, so code enforcement will handle maintenance and structural violations. If your unit has issues such as pest infestation, no heat or air conditioning, excessive mode, pipes are leaking, lack of utilities, and appliances are working, you can call 311 or submit a complaint online. Most uncorrected violations are subject to a $500 civil citation for each violation. However, we always recommend that you initially put in a maintenance request with your management team and give them ample time to address and fix the issue. But use your best judgment. As it gets warmer, you're gonna find your AC unit. You find your AC unit not working. That's gonna become a health and safety issue. So that should be addressed within 24 hours from maintenance. If maintenance hasn't fixed it and you already made them aware of the issue, then it would be best to call code enforcement. Reach out to Renters Alliance if you need guidance or have any questions on how to rectify these issues with your manager code. But also, if you live in Rockville and Gaithersburg, they have their own code department, and it's best to reach out to them, while Tacoma Park falls under county code.
Thank you, Watt. Tim, if you can tell us how to access counsel and eviction.
Sure. So if you're facing eviction and you want legal representation, the Access to Counsel and Eviction programs provides free lawyers to renters who are losing their home. So if you have a failure to pay rent case, if you have a notice of a breach of lease case, feel free to call 211 and see if you can qualify for a free lawyer. there is an income qualification, but it doesn't hurt to check. So we'll drop the link in the chat you can call 211 or visit their website.
Thank you. And also, I just want to kind of go over that if you have a court summons, you can apply for emergency rental assistance through the Department of Health and Human Services. You can either call 311 or apply in person at 3 locations. There's one in Silver Spring, there's one in Rockville, and there's one in Germantown as well. But if you have any questions, please call 311 or email Housing Stabilization Services at hhs@montgomerycountymaryland.gov. Be advised that if you've received rental assistance from DHHS within the last 12 months, you're ineligible to apply again until after that. And they also highly recommend that if you're applying for emergency rental assistance, that you also can show that you have a working plan to be able to pay the following month's rent after they have helped you out. Finally, some reminders. Our next town hall is Wednesday, June 10th at 7:00 p.m. Please look out for our newsletter announcement on topic for that town hall. And finally, the Renters Alliance will be at the test center at 8703 Flower Avenue in Long Branch bi-weekly from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. to answer any questions you may have in person, or any counseling you may need. So please feel free to come and visit us there. Our next date that will be there is June 3rd. I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Well, I'll turn it over to Pat, who has something to say. Pat, you got something you better get off of mute if you're going to say it.
Well, as always, I encourage everyone to vote. Voting is important, as I always tell you. The primary is coming up between June 11th and 18th. The actual election is on June 23rd. So please, everyone, get out and vote. If you want one of our buttons, please contact us. We'd be glad to send one out to you. Also, I want to remind you, if your building is interested in getting a tenant association up and going, let us know. We'll be glad to come by and help you with anything you need with that. We think it's important that these buildings have that kind of camaraderie. So let us know, and we'd be glad to help you out any way we can.
Thank you, Pat. That's perfect. That's again June 11th through the 18th.
For the primary.
For early voting, and the election day is the 23rd. There are a lot of candidates out there, and you should investigate to see what each one stands for.
Particularly in these days and times.
Indeed. Some of them are more supportive of tenant interests than others. So
that's right.
Keep that in mind. So with that, I want to thank everybody, particularly Jackie, for moderating our discussion this evening. And of course, to our special guests, Mayor Ashton, Monique Ashton of Rockville, Yamiel Hernandez of the city of Gaithersburg, Daniel Gutierrez from the state of Maryland's Department of Labor, James Harper also from the Department of Labor, and of course, our good friend and the head of code and so many other things at the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, Nathan Bovell. And of course, to all my staff, thank you all and who participated this evening, and good night.
Bye.